to study session. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you. For the current business and the first items for clarification on the consent calendar. Councilman Neal, do you have any clarification regarding any items on the consent calendar? Councilman Duffield? Councilwoman Dixon?
I do not.
Councilwoman Brenner? Councilman Avery?
I'll be recusing on item 4.
Right. Mayor Pro Tem Blum?
I have none. Do I have a recusal?
Number 6.
Thanks.
Okay, and next item discussion, design standard changes for residential properties located in the flood zone. Staff?
Before you start that, I need to recuse myself due to real property interests.
Thank you. Any other conflicts from staff or council?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Simone Georges will take the floor and has a brief presentation on this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, good evening, Mayor Muldoon and City Council members. Simone Georges, Community Development Director, and I have Liz Westmoreland, who's our Associate Planner. So today we're going to talk about kind of a couple parts here. We want to give you an update on the flood zone. We've talked to you about it before, but at the same time, we want to discuss some amendments that we need to make to our zoning code to allow development to occur in specific areas of town. So I put up on the screen there for everybody and everybody at home is here is a copy of our flood maps. This is a flood map that's produced by Fema, our federal government. And those items in blue that overlay over our Balboa Island or the peninsula are areas where are subject to flooding. And this subject to flooding is really 1% in a 100-year period. And every year there's a 1% chance. And through all the math that FEMA has done, this is where they've mapped there is a higher propensity for flooding. This has nothing to do with sea level rise. Sea level rise predicts the future. Flood maps look at the past data and do some probabilistic analysis to determine where's the lowest points that could be subject to flooding. And here on the next screen there, I do have some more areas of the peninsula that has some of that blue region there. Those are the highest areas that are subject to flooding. I circled a portion of on the coast, on the beach side, on the peninsula, and those properties there, which I'm going to zoom in here next, are subject to flooding by waves. So these are waves created by storm surge that have a higher percentage of actually hitting homes that are on the beachfront there. And so we have about 166 properties that are from 48th Street all the way down to 24th Street. All these properties are mapped in the flood zone. And these are not your standard flooding that we have maybe on Balboa Island, but these are subject to waves. And so you can see there the color coding there at the bottom of that slide. You have the yellow that's subject to a 15-foot wave and the purple that is subject to a 13-foot wave. Again, this is just that 1% chance that this could happen and occur. So when you build a structure for those properties, only those 166 properties, you have to build above the wave height. And this is just an exaggerated depiction of what that construction would look like. You have stilts, you have a freeboard, you're above that 100-year storm of that wave. Well, we've actually had one property develop in that part of town, and you could see there, you have the concrete deck with the concrete pilings. And that's pretty much the extreme condition that we are going to see over there in that part of town. And if you take a tape measure from the top of the concrete deck and measure it all the way down to the sand, that's about a 5-foot change in elevation. So what does that mean for height? Well, that means houses get to be built about 5 feet higher than what they're currently allowed now. This height difference is already allowed in our code. So unfortunately, we have FEMA that's remapped some of the parts of the peninsula. Those properties are subject to wave action. They are up to 15 foot for those waves. The zoning code allows property owners to redevelop their property above that, starting from that top deck all the way up for that 29 feet. So you have structures that could be built 5 feet taller than what they could be now. We have one under construction now. And then we had a variance approved at the Planning Commission last week. So height is not an issue from changing the code. The code already allows the height. The issue that we have is access to the property now. So this is just a computer rendering of a house. I mean, how do you access this home? Well, you need to have stairways, you need to have an upper deck. And as you all recall, is that anytime you build structures in that side setback, that side yard, you're not allowed to do that. So our code looks at this and says, you can't do this. You can't build stairs in that side setback. You can't extend that deck in the side setback. So what does a property owner have to do? Well, either they shrink all that access to within the footprint of the house, or they apply for a variance. So we've already had one shrink it and actually design it so that's built within the footprint of the home and nothing encroaches into the setback. And then we had one last week said, I'm not going to do that. I want to apply for a variance. And I went to the Planning Commission, and they got a unanimous approval to allow that variance. What we're asking the council today is like, are you comfortable with us amending the code so in the future there are no variances for these types of projects? What I want to do now is I'm going to have Liz go ahead and dig in a little bit further. Yes, Councilmember.
And just a quick clarifying question. So when you said that the zoning code currently allows that height addition,
That's correct.
Was that the action that the council took to increase the height? But it doesn't affect the rest of the city, correct?
Well, the council always approves the zoning code, so a past council, not this current council, did make that change. So if you look at the map and you look at Balboa Island, there's portions of Balboa Island that are subject to flooding. So our zoning code requires you to elevate that ground up to 9 foot.
So we've done that, prior council already did that to
Yes.
incorporate the FEMA requirements.
That's
And you'll
correct.
get into the FEMA insurance requirements as well as
Yes, I can definitely go into that. It wasn't part of this presentation, but I'm happy to kind of talk about
yeah,
flood
okay,
insurance.
all right, thanks.
And so with that subject of flood insurance, why do we let FEMA dictate how we build homes? Well, FEMA offers and guarantees flood insurance across the nation. And just like we're seeing with fire insurance, where some of the insurance companies are not insuring our homes that are subject to high fire hazards, we had the same problem throughout the nation where properties were subject to flooding, and there was nobody to insure it, nobody to guarantee that insurance. We participate in the flood insurance program for the nation because the feds will guarantee that insurance. There are always insurance available. Could be expensive insurance, but there's always insurance available for our property owners. But it comes with a caveat. The caveat is if you're going to be participating in the national program, you have to reduce your risk. You have to build above the flood lines. And that means you have to raise it up. And that's part of the caveat of participating in the flood insurance program. Our ordinance says we have to raise these structures up. It occurs over here on these properties, and occurs on Balboa Island, and it's going to occur on the peninsula. Balboa Island, the peninsula, that starting elevation is 9 feet, where here you're starting off at 15 foot, right? Very different because of the wave action. So let me go ahead and just pass it off to Liz. She's going to talk more about what some of the changes we have.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Muldoon, City Council members, Liz Westmoreland, Associate Planner. This exhibit is showing a simulation of what a future block in the VE zone could look like. So the homes with the green arrows show properties that have been raised to meet the FEMA standards, approximately 3 to 5 feet above the existing grade. And the homes with the black arrows are homes that would have been built before the VE standards were in place. As you can see here, the VE zone compliant homes end up being about half a story higher than the existing homes. Because of the requirement for the raised or elevated foundation, we have run into a few challenges. One of the key challenges, as Simone mentioned, is related to site access. So our code currently prohibits the stairs and the landings and decks to be located in the side and the front yard setbacks. So what ends up happening is the designer ends up needing to relocate that stair area within the first floor footprint, which cuts into that first level of the home. This requirement also reduces the usability of setback areas. So instead of typical side yards and front yards where you can walk from the inside of your home out to the beach, you can no longer do that because it's 3 to 5 feet below your finished surface. It also does not allow for direct access to the beach or the ground from your home. This exhibit shows our current requirements in the zoning code. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we show the front setback area. We typically limit all features in the front setback to 42 inches or 3.5 feet from existing grade. So the stairway here with the railing would not be allowed under the current code as it reaches almost 9 feet high from existing grade. Similarly, in the side yard setback, the stair area here exceeds our limit of 18 inches within side yard setbacks, so that access would not be allowed either. In order to build something like this today, an applicant would be required to obtain a variance from the Planning Commission. So why amend the code? We're seeking to amend the code to provide maximum utility and convenience to the property owner. We also think that it might limit the number of variances that are filed with the Planning Commission. Our potential code amendments include allowing for full encroachment into the side and the front yard setbacks. That means decks, railings, walkways, and stairs would all be allowed to be located within the side and the front yard setback without those height limits. This would provide for access from the elevated house or raised deck to the ground and provide for a more usable outdoor space. This is a 3D exhibit showing what those encroachment areas would look like. So the encroachment areas are in blue. So that there's a stairway to get from the street or the alley up into a side yard sort of catwalk area, and then get from that catwalk or that front deck into the sand or the beach area at the front yard. It also would allow for a raised deck to be located all the way up to the front property line and wrap around the home. The only thing really missing from the exhibit is the required safety railings. This exhibit is a comparison. So on the left-hand side, you have a VE compliant home that complies with today's zoning code standards. So you can see there's no direct access to the ground, and there's no stairs that lead from the home along the side yard to the ground. Also, hard to see in this image, but the deck in the front would only be able to encroach into the front setback 3 feet instead of on the right-hand side that we're proposing that could encroach 5 feet. So on the right, you see the stairs. They lead directly to the beach, up into the home, and they don't have that need to cut into the first floor footprint to provide for those stairs. It also has a deck that wraps around the side of the home with the required safety railings. Here's another angle with a comparison, again on the left-hand side, with no code amendment or variances that could be built today. So they have that shorter deck in the front yard on the left, and then if you look very closely, you can see the recessed area where the stairs are located within that buildable footprint. Whereas on the right, with the code amendment or with the variance, they're able to locate those stairs within their side yard setback, so they have access along the side yard and then directly to the beach. And then the deck in the front is able to reach all the way to the front property line. Staff has conducted several community outreach meetings. So first, back in 2019, when we were first adopting the Fema standards, we met with the city design community as well as residents to talk about the implications related to complying with these VE zone standards. And then once we started developing some changes to the code, we met with first the design community and then the affected and nearby residents. So we met with both the residents that were located in the VE zone or directly impacted homes behind the VE zone. Generally, our comments from the community were reflecting a general acceptance of the FEMA standards. They understood that we're required to comply with these building code requirements. They did express some concerns related to privacy of the adjacent homes, so especially having those raised walkways or sort of catwalk areas in the side yard overlooking their neighbors. They expressed some concerns about sight distance, so homes where the sidewalk is intersecting with the boardwalk, making sure there's enough visibility there for cyclists or pedestrians trying to get from the sidewalk onto the boardwalk. And then lastly, and still important, visual impacts for the homes that are located behind the VE zone, since our amendments would only apply to the VE zone properties and not the homes located behind them. And with that, it's been since 2019 since we spoke to the council about this code amendment, since it was originally initiated, so we wanted to go back to the council to receive some feedback and see if this is something that we should move forward with. And if so, if directed, staff would then prepare the draft ordinances, review them with the Planning Commission for a recommendation, return to council, and then ultimately go to the California Coastal Commission. And with that, we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Very succinct. Any questions or comments from Diane? Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Simone, do you want to show those images of the homes behind? Do you have that with you?
Certainly. So what we've done is we just did some Google Earth images, and our concern was is that what you're going to raise a house another 5 feet. What are those impacts to views? And for the city, we don't protect private views. But if you look at this image here, you go down Seashore. You got the homes behind those oceanfront homes. They're at right angles, and so here is kind of different angle and view. A lot of the properties already are blocking any of those private views. There is that peekaboo view that is going to be maintained between houses on the property line. So we think those are continuing to be maintained. But if one of those homes went up another 5 feet, I don't think you're impacting dramatically those views. I'm not taking away their view rights or what they do, the value of their homes, but we were concerned about what the view implications could be. And again, just kind of going down here, we have 166 on the left, 166 properties on the left, and on the right side, we counted about 57 lots, and some of the lots have duplexes, and of those 57, about 15 have a roof deck. Some of those roof decks may get impacted because that house does raise up by 5 feet. But I do think there's the view between the homes continue to be maintained, especially on that third level. On the first level, it's different because there may be encroachments, as Liz talked about. Again, here is an example of a home that is kind of butts up against those homes on the beach. And you can see that they have some limited views. If one of those homes went up 5 feet, you still have that view kind of down in between the properties. So we do think there's definitely going to be some impacts to those views, but there's some of those views are maintained because you can look down in the side yards there. And that's it.
Okay. Councilman Avery.
So essentially, the side yard setbacks ostensibly remain the same. The distance between houses, in the code remains the same. Is that correct?
Correct. It's the distance between houses stays the same. It's that access stairway that we showed is what changes.
Right. And the concern there is just sort of the view into the neighbor's yard from up above.
Correct. And if
Which
you have one side of the property, you have that is encroaching to the kind of the property line, and then the neighbor adjacent encroaches to the property line. So you have these kind of big monolithic structures in between with those access stairs that are going up.
Right. The windows could still be, an architect could work around that a little bit by
Agree.
raising the heights of the windows, or
Correct.
people could get blinds if they chose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilman Duffield.
Thank you, Mayor. So the water is supposed to go underneath the home and all the way through. The last time I thought that's what I interpreted it. So what if the second row of houses is going to get inundated with water? Or am I not thinking correctly? Why? So you let the water go under the front house. There's not much elevation rise to the house behind it. Won't the house behind it get wrecked?
You are absolutely correct.
So, and also the cars in this garage that I saw in your drawing, your cars are just thrashed. They're not saving the car.
No.
If you're not home, your cars are gone.
And that's absolutely correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Dixon. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you. Well, just to follow up on Duffy's question, so is FEMA requiring any flood mitigation for the second row of homes?
No, they're not requiring for the second row of homes. And what their FEMA's concern is, they want the water to pass underneath the structure. And the reason why, if you don't, the water can get diverted to either side of the home and damage any structures to the left or to the right or any pedestrian. So they rationalize to say, well, we want the water to go underneath it. It reduces the damage of the first row of homes, but there is no really level of protection for the next row of homes.
And then your mock-ups here, do you have a conceptual architectural drawing of a home adjacent to this where both homes are placing their stairway to the beach adjacent to one
Is that the
another?
best?
No,
I think this is the best one we have. We don't have where both properties have the stairways adjacent to each other, but this is the best one we have right now. It doesn't depict what you're asking, council member.
It doesn't what?
It does not depict what you're asking.
Because that would be good to see how that visualizes
true.
how that looks. If like this smaller home gets scraped and they want to build the same, you've going to have two stairways adjacent right within inches feet, maybe? 3
That's-
feet, I guess.
It's within inches, absolutely. And we could definitely work on another rendering like that. If the council's okay with us moving forward with just the amendments, we could still develop the additional renderings, share that with the planning commission before it comes back to the city council.
We received a new question. We received a letter from a resident affected by this and said, are there any options other than FEMA insurance? And has the city looked at every possible way to address this from an insurance and cost to the resident?
You know, back in 2017, 2018, when we adopted the new FEMA maps, this question came up before. Why do we even bother with FEMA? And so staff did the research with regards to flood insurance. Do we drop FEMA? Do we drop the national program and go to the private market? What we found with the private market picks and chooses what level of risk they want. They want your premium, but they want zero risk. So what we've seen already is some of the property owners were dropped from their private insurance company. So there's a huge risk that property owners cannot find flood insurance because private insurance has no obligation to insure anybody if they don't want to. And so that is the biggest risk for the city. And hence, staff's recommendation is always to continue with our flood insurance program with FEMA's program.
So the timing on this, so this is today, obviously, a study session. You would bring it back as directed to the full council, and then we would pass a new ordinance.
That's correct. So probably about 2 months before we go to the planning commission and get a recommendation from them, and then after that, a month after that, so in about before the end of the year, we should be back to the city council.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You really want to vote on it, don't you? Okay, Councilwoman. Take your time. Yeah, Councilman Brenner.
Simone, if someone wanted to build a new place like this and they wanted to excavate below, could they increase parking for that area by having it below their house?
FEMA does not allow for basements in this zone, so they wouldn't be able to have an underground parking in this area. However, they can have the garages like you've seen in these exhibits that are located more at grade. And then the walls that go around them are actually, believe it or not, breakaway walls. So they're not the typical walls that you would see of a garage.
So the chances are they would not do that, or they...
They would not.
Okay, all right. So I was thinking that might be a plus to this if we could find one, was additional parking. And so my other question is, if they, in the scenario Diane was talking about, where you would have two right next to each other, where would the property line be? How close would that be to each of their stairways or walkways?
So here in this kind of example there, we assume that that property line is right next to that access stair. So it'll be they'll be abutting against each other.
So if there were two, they would be right next to each
That's
other
correct.
with a wall down the middle.
Correct.
And is there anything that would prevent us from allowing properties on the second or third row to build to this same standard?
It's really a policy discussion for the city council. We've never talked to the community about that, about their height or the setbacks here. We didn't say that we are going to ask the council to allow that height. So I think definitely there is a conversation to have with the community. But if that's the council's direction, then we can definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Duffield.
Thank you. So my suggestion would be to consider a more robust sand replenishment on the beach out in the front. And we have quite a bit of sand in our harbor that's good, and if we could install this pipe that I was hoping we could get approved to do that, like they do in Santa Cruz, which they do all the time, every day almost, spreading their sand around to keep the ocean away. Is that something that? Well, that's what I would favor over this, but I don't know how you go from there to get approvals for that. Would they accept a higher beach?
It's a good question, Councilmember Duffield. I'm going to turn to Deputy Director Mr. Campbell and call him on the spot because he and I actually spoke about this yesterday because of our general plan update and sea level rise. So I'm going to have Mr. Campbell kind of address it. Yeah, that is a very good question. At the end of the day, we will be looking at sand replenishment or enhanced sand replenishment along our beaches as a way to build up the beach profile as a way to combat sea level rise. We need to plant some dune grasses and what have you to kind of hold it there. We'll manage the sand better and get more on there. So will that actually lead to a map revision that FEMA will accept to then change these standards? That's something that we could take up with FEMA in the future when there actually is the sand available there. So, I mean, I think we'd have to have the engineering studies to go in and do to get a map revision. And so I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think there is a possibility. But, you know, we can envision and we should envision in more sand on the beaches as part of our sea level rise strategy to protect as many homes as possible.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dixon.
Okay, to follow up on that, now Congresswoman Michelle Steele got an appropriation, we're all very grateful for it, that does provide for sand replenishment from Seal Beach to Laguna Beach. Do you know how that interacts with this?
Well, any sand that we put on our beaches is helpful. It increases the beach profile, extends the, we do have some areas where the beach is actually eroding. And so the more sand we have up on our beaches, the better, obviously for recreation. But what we really need to do is raise the beach profile. We probably need to raise it 3 to 5 feet before it has any meaningful effect on these waves. And then we would have to have basically 3 to 5 feet of sand on the beach, and that affects views. But again, I think that's the part of the trade-off that we're going to have to do to protect the peninsula from future sea level rise. And so, again, this is going to be part of our comprehensive strategy, but we have to have the sand there to then prove the case to FEMA to then change the maps to then lower the homes. Absent that, then we may see more homes like this built over the future. But again, it is definitely helpful to have more sand on the beach.
So to that point, maybe this is more of a public works question. Do we know how much sand through the replenishment that's been authorized and paid for and it should be done every 8 to 10 years and hasn't been because Congress hasn't made the appropriations, but now that's going to happen. Have we done any analysis? Is Public Works here? Do we have any analysis of the volume, the quantity of sand that's going to be replenishing our beaches in the near future?
Yes, thank you. I don't have that handy with us. I know the replacement that's been funded is going to be up in Seal Beach, and I heard 1 million or so yards. It's a lot. But again, in the span of the coastline, that's probably not the volume we need. And it also trickles down from Seal Beach all the way down to us. So there's probably, we've been talking with Councilmember Duffield and Michelle Steele to try to do a mid-section refurbishment, basically going down by Balboa Pier and bringing sand on there. They've never done that, but coming down in this direction and doing a replenishment down here. A lot of money and a lot of sand, though.
I thought when that appropriation was approved, passed, I mean, she issued a news release that will directly affect all the beaches from Seal Beach down.
It does. It feeds the feeder beaches up by Seal Beach, and that works its way all the way down to the wedge. It doesn't make it to Laguna, but it's between the wedge and the San Gabriel River, basically. And they put it up by the San Gabriel River, and the tides and the currents bring it down to Newport Beach.
So it's be a matter of years before it kind of works itself up the beach, onto the beach, in front of the homes kind of thing?
I don't have a time frame, but it's a consistent program where they keep feeding it and it keeps working its way down. If I recall, too, the program was supposed to be nourished every few years, and they've been at least 10 years. I know
Right.
maybe definitely you have that answer, but it's been a long time. They're out of their schedule. They need to get back on it.
So is it a realistic option?
Well, at the end of the day, I think it is a realistic option, but we need to look for more sand than what we've accounted for. The county's doing their maintenance dredging out of the Santa Ana River. That comes onto our beach as well. Again, that's to maintain the existing beach profile and maybe widen it a little bit. But I think what we're really talking about is, as I said, 3 to 5 feet. Don't quote me on the exact numbers there. We wait for the engineering analysis and how much sand is that we'll need over the next coming decades. We have not got to that level of review. So it's definitely
Well, I
something-
guess I just believe that we should explore. We're sitting here on millions and millions of cubic feet of sand, and can we protect these homes through sand, our own sand replenishment? I mean, I'm just hearing my own words. I know that sounds like a very difficult engineering, public works type endeavor, but have we considered looking into that option?
Actually, we have talked to the Corps of Engineers. I think the first step is to lengthen the growing field. Because if you know that area there that has multiple growings and
Right.
it carves in there like a half moon, those growings keep that beach in place. And the theory we talk with the Corps is if we could get those growings at another 1,500 feet, then it'll catch more sand and then build a wider beach is what would help with the protection. We've asked them about that. It's not an official project yet, but maybe that's our next federal effort. We start getting them to lengthen that growing field and also replenish our beaches directly.
Well, I just know that Mr. Duffield's been talking about this for several years, so I will cede the rest of my questioning to him. I'm sure he can help.
And if I may, council members, one thing to consider too, because we want these policies in place as we go forward in many years. So from a planning standpoint, we're going to be working on the general plan update, the safety element. All this discussion are going to be policies in that future safety element. And so those policies are going to carry us forward where staff will implement those policies, and then it'll talk about the studies, the growing fields, sand replenishment. So all that we'll be putting into that safety element in our general plan. So the future council, the future staff can continue to be working on this.
Okay.
Councilman Duffield.
So, Dave, before you leave, sorry. So another source of sand might be the Santa Ana River sand. We know it's heavy grained. It seems to be great quality. Is it feasible to truck the sand from there down our way?
It is, and to that point, every time the sand maintenance project with the county goes on, we actually move a lot of material from Santa Ana River down into the growing fields. That's our first spot to kind of replenish that area. We have taken some all the way down to the Balboa Pier. It gets expensive to truck it.
Yeah.
We've actually, at one time, if you recall, using what Duffy referred to as a hydraulic method, we had them pump it down with the slurry line quite a ways. And we buried the line, if you recall, this was many years ago in the sand.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking to bring that sand down. It wants to go in various places.
So is that more feasible than the dredging costs and such? Or-
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would think the Santa Cruz model too is if we go, let's say, what we do in Seal Beach is we go a mile offshore and we find a borrow pit, we find where the sand is, and we hydraulically dredge it up
Yeah.
to the beach. That's probably the most feasible model to get a lot of sand.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Blum.
Thank you. I love all the ingenuity up here. I am going to bring it right back to kind of the task at hand with what we're looking at for this ordinance. And I think I just want to wrap my head around one element real quick, that currently if they didn't have to build up, which now they have to build up, they would have direct access to the boardwalk and to the sides because the home is at that level. So without I think the variance is very necessary to change the ordinance here to give them the access, because otherwise what we're doing is we're building a bunch of homes on the boardwalk or the beach that can't get to the boardwalk or the beach other than possibly leaving out the back of their home, walking around through an alley and then coming back. This is the approved variance, and I think without it, you kind of pull it from a different point. It just doesn't seem like that's ever really going to fly. I think we'll keep having these variances showing up at the Planning Commission, and we'll keep approving them because it just makes logical sense. And they're not really encroaching or getting closer to any other house than they'd already be. It's just that because the way the code reads, we can't build a staircase next to where we would already have it or next to that encroachment. So homes will stay the same size. Now we just have staircases kind of giving access to the home, which makes it feel more open from my opinion. And so I would love to see staff work on something like this, that we can kind of, we have to move with the tides, as they might say, to work with the new designs that we're forced upon based upon some large insurance companies. I think this is a great option, so I would love to see you guys be able to bring something back to us. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. A public comments on this item, please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Brian Jeanette. Happen to be one of the architects in the city that has provided you with some of the exhibits. And firstly, I'd like to thank staff for the efforts that they've gone through to help best these projects sooner than later, because the whole besting process has become so tedious It's taken years to get these now going on the area, and the people that buy these properties are getting punished severely by the time elements that we're dealing with. So making this so that these projects can come to the staff without the need for variance, I think is a very good idea. And I do think that there are things that are going to be facing all of us concerning sea level rise, as well as these rules that FEMA are coming up with. Interesting point that Councilman Dixon made, and many of you others. If you look at the actual FEMA maps, they just, in some cases, get 15 to 20 feet that line into the property. And so the reality of it is that that wave dissipates before it actually gets to the street. It's finishing off on these within a few feet of the beachside front of these properties. Sea level rise, on the other hand, is a very different situation. And I'm looking at the reports that we see from our consultants, and one project we're working on right now, a 650-foot deep beach with a 6-foot increase in wave in sea level rise, that will dissipate in 250 feet, 400 feet away from the project. And so there are a lot of things here that are somewhat mysterious, but they're able to look at them and start to blend them into hopefully something we can all live with. But I think for starters for today, kind of making this a little bit easier to work with and help the residents move their projects along without additional burden, I think is really a very good idea. So I would agree with Councilman Bloom and push this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come forward. Please state the name and the name of your campaign for the record. Just teasing, Jim. Go ahead.
Mayor Motoon, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. First of all, I believe some of the properties that are affected by this are actually beyond where the boardwalk ends. So what is called front access to the beach is actually, I think, to private encroachments that already exist in the city's 15-foot right-of-way for those houses rather than to the public boardwalk. One thing that I'm guessing but was not clear to me from the staff presentation, they're asking you about a proposed ordinance which is somehow going to allow stairs in the side setbacks. All the illustrations we saw were stairs that went only to the elevated first floor level. Is the proposal limited to that? That would be the only kind of stairs allowed in the side setback, or is staff proposing any kind of stairs that the homeowner wants to build? They could go to the roof deck top if they wanted. It was not totally clear from the presentation which that was. As to the second row of houses question, I think as Mr. Jeanette was suggesting, FEMA seems to be operating under the belief that the intense wave action dissipates with distance from the shoreline. And apparently the first row would be much more impacted than the second row or third row in. I'm just curious, are there other cities and other states perhaps where FEMA requires more than one row of houses to be built on stilts? And if they ever do that, do we have an estimate of how much feet of sea level rise we would have to encounter before a wider area in these areas needed the increased elevation? So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm guessing there's a height limit on the stairs?
So it is for access to the dwelling unit and access to the beach and boardwalk.
So is there a specific language that's going to say it's only for access to?
That's correct. We haven't drafted the language yet,
Okay. That makes
Mr.
sense.
Mayor. So, but we're focusing really on access to the structure and access to the beach.
When you bring it back to us, it won't have a second floor or higher access.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Excuse me. All right. Seeing none. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, I want to commend staff. You've been working on this for a long time and try to really mitigate the impacts on the surrounding properties. if Mr. Jeanette did this design, that looks very good. And I've seen some other designs that you've done, and so I mean, these aren't required designs, but I mean, it can be done, and it can be done in a way that minimizes the impact. And I think we've all seen or been to homes on the East Coast in Florida and South Carolina, Delaware. I mean, many of them are built on stilts, and they have been for quite some time. And actually in Malibu, I think did you show pictures from Malibu, or did I have seen that before anyway?
I didn't show them.
Oh, there was in the LA Times recently, in the real estate section, that homes are being built on pilings now in Malibu. So this is, I guess, the way of the future. But having said that, I support this. I just ought to commend Councilmember Duffield, who's been raising this issue for as long as he's been on the council. I wish we could have some parallel effort just to protect our beaches anyway. And we do have the sand infusion coming in from that appropriation, but looking at other sources, whether it's around Balboa Island, whether it's Santa Ana River, I would just like to put on the record that that is something we should be pursuing aggressively as well. Okay, but I do support your recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments specifically? All right, should we help if we did a straw poll?
Yes, please.
Okay, generally, you're looking for support for the item?
That's correct.
Do you need any specifics or just general support?
No, just general support to go ahead and amend the code to allow these to move forward.
Great. Please raise your hand if you support generally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for comments on public comments on agenda and non-agenda items.
Mayor Muldoon, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. I noticed from the agenda that the city attorney is probably going to announce in a moment that you are going to be discussing the price and terms of payment for a public property at 700 Dover Drive. And I just wanted the public to understand that 700 Dover Drive appears to be the Castaways Park, the Upper Castaways. And I and perhaps other members of the public are curious what you're planning to sell or lease out of that park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Good afternoon, council members. My name's Laura Curran. I live in Coronado Del Mar. I'm here to talk about the drug and alcohol rehabs since we haven't had any updates in a while. So residents of Newport Beach deal on an ongoing basis with the fact that Newport's become the rehab Riviera, and this is now extended from the Department of Healthcare Services drug and alcohol rehabs to the Department of Social Services rehab. And I want to point out that we've been engaging with staff and with some of the council members, but we had a lot of engagement, but we haven't had any updates since April 2022. So we're asking you and staff to support ongoing engagement and ongoing reporting through the weekly reports from our city manager and from council on these activities. Secondly, we are still having issues where code enforcement is telling residents to call the drug rehabs and report issues directly to the drug rehabs of nuisances or parking or noise. I got a letter the other day telling me to call the rehab to report their nuisances to them. Third, we've asked for the names of some of these operators to be confirmed and for copies of their licenses. And I know in one case, for example, the city has still not been able to provide documentation about the owner of the rehabs on Dahlia Avenue in Coronado Del Mar. We don't have any documentation or copies of the license. Finally, we as residents think that there are many facilities where you have two locations which are licensed or unlicensed, which are operating together with the characteristics of integral facilities. And there are many opinions about whether these can be enforced, but I want to share with you a letter written by Cotty Petrie Norris asking the city to be more vigorous in asserting the right to enforce against integral facilities or to engage with the state. Assemblymember Norris asked on a letter on May 10th that when the legislature, to Aaron Harp, when the legislature enacted Health and Safety Code, they required that 6-bed residential facilities be treated the same as a family. and the legislators determined that if the program was structured as a family unit, then cities and counties should allow it to locate, and it wasn't subject to local permitting. But the intent was to allow standalone facilities which acted as the family characteristics to operate. It has come to the legislature's attention and to Cotty Petrie Norris's attention and to our attention that many of these facilities are 2 locations or more which band together so they can get economies of scale, and they continue to operate without appropriate oversight and with overcrowding. Cotty Petrie Norris stated that Costa Mesa's ordinance has a very strong integral facilities definition that has been reviewed and has been upheld multiple times before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. This integral facilities definition has passed scrutiny several times, and she's asking that the city of Newport Beach prudently maintain its current integral facilities definition and report potential violations of integral facilities to the Department of Healthcare Services or the Department of Social Services. And if anyone would like a copy of this letter sent by Assemblymember Norris on May 10th, I'm happy to provide it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the copy as well. Any other comments? Yes. Yeah, this is appropriate time. It's a non-agenda item.
Okay.
Oh, but what about during study sessions? Is that separate agenda technically?
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yes, although it's not on this agenda, it is on the public council session. This is a study session after closed session. So that might be a more appropriate time during the item.
What time would that be?
That would be, what time? 5:30 is when we?
Yeah, we're coming back at 5:30, and they'll probably be about 6:30. Maybe, do you have other plans? Maybe we let her make her comment now, so if she's not available later.
I can come back. That's okay.
Okay.
Whichever you'd prefer. If you want to make it now, you can.
I'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session announcement?
Yes, thank you. The City Council adjourned a closed session to meet with the city's labor negotiators regarding negotiations with the Association of Newport Beach Ocean Lifeguards, and to meet with the city's real property negotiators regarding negotiations with Jeff McBride of the YMCA regarding the property located at 700 Dover Drive in Newport Beach. And that's all set forth on the agenda under items 4A and B. Thank you.
Thank you. We are recessed till the 5:30 regular meeting. Call the meeting to order for the July 26, 2022 regular city council meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. Is there a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Muldoon. There's no closed session report this evening.
Thank you. We'll now have the invocation led by Pastor Drew Smithson of Orange County First Assembly of God, Santa Ana.
Thank you. Good evening. Let us pray. Dear Jesus, I come to you tonight and I thank you for our leaders. Psalm 75 says, you are the one who raised up leaders in our time. And Lord, we know that that leader, Esther, that you raised up, you told her through her uncle that for such a time as this, that she had come to the kingdom, Lord. And we believe that these are the leaders for such a time as this in Newport Beach. Lord, I ask you to give them wisdom. As you said in your book of James, that when we ask for wisdom, you'll give us wisdom, not just a little bit, but you'll give us more than enough to make decisions on complex issues. Lord, I agree with King Solomon, the wisest man ever, who said, if we ask, you will light our paths. You will show us which way to go when we have to make decisions. And Lord, as you encourage Joshua to be strong and fearless, I just ask you to give strength, Lord, to these leaders as they lead us in this city. So, Lord, I ask you to bless these servant leaders. I ask you to bless their families. I ask you to bless all the residents of Newport Beach tonight, in the coming days, in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Councilwoman Brenner, please lead us in the pledge.
Yes, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, notice to the public.
The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items.
Thank you. Now it's time for council announcements or reports from council members on committee activities, and the time for council members to request an A1 item be placed on a future agenda. Councilman O'Neill, do you have any announcements or reports?
Yeah, I was able to attend the Building Industry Association of Orange County Government Affairs. They asked me to come in and kind of talk about how things are going on the housing element discussions around the county. At the very end, one of the members looked at me and said, "Well, when are you going to talk about the good part?" And there was none. And then we had a discussion about, we had a TCA board meeting. I was able to attend the Ben Carlson Foundation dinner. A group of us, with the mayor, a group of us attended the Newport Beach Police Department promotional ceremony. We had an ACCOC board meeting, the Coronado Residents Association meeting with Councilwoman Brenner, and the upcoming Newport Beach Junior Guard Monster Mile. To all our junior guards, good luck to you. And then I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Is there a slide for the police night out? Nope. Okay. So I should have written the date. I apologize.
May I come right back to you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Councilman Duffield. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items. Yes, I also attended the Police Department promotional ceremony on July 18th. That's always a pleasure to honor and recognize those important promotions. On July 18th, the Friends of the Newport Beach Animal Shelter had their topping off ceremony. And again, just as a reminder, it's another example in our community of a public-private partnership that the community has raised the funds to purchase the property, design, and build this new animal shelter, world-class animal shelter, which they at some point in the future will turn over to the city to operate as we currently operate the current shelter. So it's a wonderful partnership with the Friends of Newport Beach Animal Shelter. I had a highly well-attended town hall last week, so thank you, staff. A lot of issues were on the agenda, but I also just wanted to give a special shout-out to Southern California Edison, who did a special courtesy to attend the town hall and explain to and describe and present to our residents on the peninsula the significant infrastructure improvements that are taking place that the company is investing. Ratepayers are providing it ultimately to invest in improved infrastructure on the peninsula. So I'm grateful to Edison's support for our community. And a couple of things, I think I have some slides on 2 items. The first would be, you've heard me talk about our anti-litter campaign, which is underway. I hope you're seeing the Make a Splash, Pick Up Trash. Hope people are talking about it. A number of businesses have asked the city for some additional signage for their windows and public-facing areas. So the purpose is twofold: is to educate and create awareness to our residents, our visitors, our businesses, to help keep Newport Beach beautiful, because we can't spend a lot of money always cleaning our sidewalks and public spaces. It's great when the public participates. And also is to highlight our expanded volunteer program, which is being coordinated by Teresa Schweitzer in Public Works. The city has updated and expanded its volunteer program to better align individual volunteers and groups with the areas of the city that need the most attention. So that's really a fine program. So the signs, bless you, the signs will stay up through Labor Day, but the expanded volunteer program will stay in place going forward. Any questions to newportbeachca.gov/clean. And next, just to share a good new program, I'll ask Mr. Georges, he's right there, to come up and talk to us about Civic, City Virtual Connect online permitting. The city has launched a new online platform, Civic, which stands for City Virtual Connect. And I'll have Mr. Georges explain it, because this is 21st century technology in our planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dixon. So we're really excited about this launch of this new platform and new portal. and the council authorized this project pre-COVID, so we've been working on it a few years. We got delayed a little bit due to COVID. But what this is finally we have our online permits are available. These are our express permits, very simplistic permits. And this is going to lay that strong foundation for our development community, for our designers, our architects, developers, and homeowners to start submitting plans and projects through our online portal. So we're really excited about this opportunity where, if a lot of the members of the public see our applicants come to City Hall with wheel wagons full of plans or carrying heavy plans. So in the next phase here, in the next 12 months, this is going to convert where we're going to actually allow these online applications, online plan submittal processes. There at the bottom is the web link. It's newportbeachca.gov/civic. It takes you to this page, and you get to log in on the upper right-hand corner. And then you can go ahead and apply for permits, apply for planning applications, and check on, or even apply for inspections. So we're really excited about this platform and for the future for our city.
So when this is fully up and running and fully implemented, then people, contractors, everyone who comes to the permit counter, they will no longer be doing that.
That's correct. This is going to be our online portal where we don't have to have anybody drive to City Hall. We're not there yet, 100%
Right.
there. That's going to be our future. This is just the beginning of this.
Very good. Well, thank you. And thank you for
Thank you.
coming forward. Appreciate it. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
It's exciting. Thank you. Councilman O'Neill, did you find that information?
I did, thank you. So the National Night Out is indeed a national program where communities get together to meet with their local police departments. Newport Beach Police Department will be celebrating National Night Out on August 2nd, which is next Tuesday, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Bonita Canyon Sports Park. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Brenner.
Yes. On Wednesday, July 13th, I attended the Speak Up Newport meeting that was held here in our community room, and it was an overflow crowd with both sets of doors open and chairs outside. The topic was the burglaries that we've been seeing around town, and everyone is very concerned about. Our police department came, and they did an excellent job of talking about how aggressive they're really being in this regard. People were very respectful. I was expecting them to be more angry than they were, but they were very respectful, and there seems to be just the attitude that we're all trying to work together on this, but the police department is taking it very seriously and doing all sorts of things that we don't even know about. It can be viewed on our city website and should be showing on Newport Beach TV. On July 14th at 8 a.m., I attended the Good Morning CDM session, and we had Jeff Boyles and Kevin Bass there talking about fire safety and the things that we are doing, need to do, and it's frustrating, but it's something that we are taking very seriously. I also attended the Newport Beach Police Department first mobile cafe gathering at Rose's Donuts on Saturday, July 16th in CDM. That was their first mobile cafe, and they're going to be doing others of those throughout town, and it was really well received. Everybody enjoyed just having a chance to chat with different police department members. I attended the July 17th concert on the Green with a Billy Joel tribute band. That event is always so interesting because we just fill up that whole grass area out there, and people have such a good time. It's wonderful to see multiple generations dancing and singing together, and that was really fun. I just had one comment on the police department promotional ceremony that we attended, and also the one we did for the fire department recently. I think we must have a requirement in there that everyone that works for us is beautiful, because we have the most gorgeous police, and they have wives that are gorgeous, and then they bring their families, and it's just like an all-American festival when you see these young people, and they're so impressive in their words and their deeds. So let's see. So the topping off ceremony for the animal shelter, and I attended Diane's town hall meeting. There's so many similarities between Diane's district and I think Balboa Island and Corona del Mar that it's nice to be able to go to those and hear staff talk about problems that are kind of pervasive along the whole coast. Will and I did the Coronado Residents Association board meeting, and the highlight speaker for that day was Laird Hayes, who has been a long-standing member of our Citizens and Policing volunteer program, and people just loved hearing from him and about that program, and so I think he was recruiting and got some people to be interested. I did mosquito and vector control board. I also attended the OC Fair Orange County Government Officials Dinner on last Friday night, where there were electeds from throughout the county. I did a Zoom meeting on Sunday with California Alliance of Local Electeds regarding the RENA allocation lawsuit that they are anticipating. And I was glad that Aaron was on that call as well, because I didn't have to take the notes that I would have taken otherwise. So I was glad you were there. But it looks promising in some ways. We'll see. Some announcements on, I think we've got a slide for Saturday, October the 22nd, is going to be a big day for Coronado High School Foundation, as they will be celebrating all of the graduates for the last 60 years with an open house dedicating the Coach Sumner Field. That event goes from 11 to 4 at the high school on that day, and a concert that night that will be down at the dunes. If you go to www.cdmfoundation.org, you can find out more information about these events. You can find out about sponsorships. You can find out about buying tickets and the whole schedule for the weekend. So that will be fun. They're featuring Flashback Heart Attack at the concert at the dunes that night. And the other event that we have coming up is, we have a slide on this. I'm working with the board of the Balboa Island Museum, and they are the recipients of a fundraising effort that's going to be held at the Balboa Island Museum on Friday, November the 4th. It's from 6 to 10 p.m. It's an adults-only event. It's not to bring the kids to, because it's going to be lots of food and drink and a lot of fun. So anyway, but contact the Balboa Island Museum if you want to get more information about sponsorships or tickets or anything, and the Pyle family is doing that to benefit the museum. Thank you. Oh, one future A1 item that I'd like to add is a discussion about the Coastal Commission, because ever since I've been on the council, and I think since all of us can remember, the Coastal Commission is kind of held up as a threat. They're weaponized against some things in our community. And I asked Simone if we could do an informational session to really find out who our consultants are, how they work with the members of the Coastal Commission staff and the commissioners, and help us to understand how we can improve that relationship. Because when Duffy and Diane and I were on the phone with the Coastal Commission trying to get our short-term rental ordinance passed, they were very helpful to us and very respectful, and it seems like sometimes people are throwing them in our face and saying, you can't do this because of the Coastal Commission. So I'd just like for us to know better how that whole situation works, and for our people to know how that works. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Orange County Sanitation District Administration meeting about 10 days ago, and also about a day later, the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee meeting here at City Hall. And the only other thing I have is, as many people know in neighborhoods, there's a lot of reslurring going on of city streets. And my street, Little Holly Lane, which is a one-block street between Irvine and Tustin, received a demerit because we were slurried, and many of our residents were incapable of not driving on the slurry before it was dry. And they had a myriad of excuses, but today they have reslurried our street again. And I also saw this on several other streets, just people coming home and sort of not adhering to the 5 o'clock time to not be on the street between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And just creating, a lot of divots in the streets after they've been very well, paved over with the slurry. So I am refraining from going door to door to my neighbors. But I was just amazed because there was a lot of outreach actually to everybody with, door hangers and notices and signage on the streets. And so it's, I hope going forward, I know this project's ongoing and Public Works it's incredible. We live in a town where they're doing this, our streets are beautiful and the effort is significant, and we just need everybody to, figure out a way to walk from parking off-site and then walking in your street. It's kind of neat, I found, to actually walk a couple blocks and check out the neighborhood, and, it doesn't hurt you. So I just hope folks will be a little more conscious of that effort, because it's expensive for everybody to repave another street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Blum.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go on to matters which council members have asked to be placed on a future agenda. These are not up for discussion. These are rather lengthy. Would you like me to read a condensed version, Councilman, or would you like to read them?
I don't think you need to read them.
Okay.
I think everyone's read them.
Okay. So the first one is related to the creation of ad hoc committee. Please raise your hand if you'd like to support this.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
I believe we eliminated.
You can ask a clarifying question.
You may. Okay. Yes, Councilman Dixon.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill.
I'm sorry, you cannot address
Oh.
other council members. You can.
I'll ask Mr. Aaron Harp. Okay. Because we did do this on the council policies a couple of years ago. So when I see here, one, delete or reduce language, I support that. And the advisability of applying sunset provisions for new or existing code provisions, I support that. So we're not looking at policies to change the substance of them in any way.
So it's to delete or reduce language, so it could possibly change the policies.
Oh. The substance, intent of the policy?
I think it's to look at the policies and potentially make changes to them. Because if you look at making recommendations concerning deleting or reducing language,
Yes, which it seems technical.
but it could change. I guess it could change the overall. If you're going to reduce or get rid of language, it could change.
Yeah, a comma can change the whole contract. So, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Interested in moving this item forward for more discussion? Please raise your hand.
That's unanimous, 7-0.
Thank you. Next item is also introduced by Councilman O'Neill, and I'll also summarize it as a recommendation made by an ad hoc committee to delete or reduce language and advisability of applying sunset provisions to new existing code provisions. Please raise your hand if you'd like to support this item.
Unanimous, 7-0.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read notice regarding the public comments on the consent calendar.
This is a time in which council members may pull items from consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 12. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Thank you. Councilman O'Neill, do you have any items to pull from the consent calendar or conflicts to announce on items 1 through 12? Councilman Duffield? Councilwoman Dixon?
None.
Councilwoman Brenner?
None.
Councilman Avery?
I must recuse from item 4 due to my being on the Sanitation District Board where we've discussed this matter.
Mayor Pro Tem Blum?
I have a recusal due to real property interests on item 6, and I'd like to lodge a no vote on 11 and a no vote on 12.
Very good, and I myself have none. Is there a motion?
There's a motion. I'd like to move the balance of consent with the amended minutes, announcing a conflict of Councilmember Avery on item 4, a recusal by myself due to real property on item 6, and a no vote lodged by myself on 11 and 12.
And no second. We'll now go to public comments on consent calendar. It's items 1 through 12. Now's the time to come forward if you want to speak on those items. Okay, seeing no request to speak, we'll go back to the dais. Let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for item 3, ordinance 2022-17, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, amending Title 19 subdivisions and Title 20 planning and zoning of the Newport Beach Municipal Code related to Senate Bill 9, housing developments and urban lot splits. Councilmember, thank you. With Councilmember Avery absent, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Now is time for public comments on non-agenda items. If you have any public comments on non-agenda items, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor Muldoon and members of the council. My name is Nancy Scarborough. I attended the California Alliance of Local Electeds along with Aaron Harp and Councilmember Brenner this weekend. It's a group of elected council people and activists who meet weekly to discuss issues related to housing and HCD, among other projects and topics. This weekend, we were discussing the audit by the State of California auditor on the methods used for calculating RENA numbers by HCD. And as I reported previously, the auditor found a number of math errors, misinterpretations, and discrepancies. It appears the only way to address this problem is for cities to file a lawsuit against either the various councils of government or HCD itself. This group seems to be heading in a direction of filing a lawsuit against HCD, and at this point they're gathering information, disseminating information to cities, and probably will bring forward some sort of a lawsuit that we could participate in, or other cities could participate in. A lawsuit against HCD could cause them to disclose some of their reasoning, recalculate their number of units that are assigned to SCAG and other city council governments. If nothing is done, HCD could continue to base their calculations on the same deficient data, and in future years, we could see the repeated miscalculations that affect our RENA numbers here in the city. I would like to recommend that we continue to follow the developments, and I would like to propose that we consider joining that lawsuit when the time comes. One other little tidbit of information is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac released their report on housing needs on a national basis, and they determined that the national housing shortage increased from 2.5 million to 3.8 million housing units between 2018 and 2020. 3.5 million across the country, and in California, we are told that we have nearly half of that in our one state. So to me, that just seems, it's an indication that there is a problem here. Just thank you very much.
Very insightful. Thank you. Next speaker, please come forward.
Good evening, council people. My name is Mark Simon. I live at 2420 First Avenue in Coronado Del Mar. I'd like to make some brief comments about the boat slip bill I recently received from the city-operated Balboa Yacht Basin. My July bill was $927.55. I sent you an email with several attachments, including these bills. My August bill is $1,110.53. That's an increase of 19.72% in 1 year, which I consider price gouging. This is after an increase of over 100% above the $425 a month boat slip fee that I paid when I originally got my slip E12 at the Balboa Yacht Basin 30 years ago in 1992. Even so, the average annual rent increase in those 30 years has been 3.6% per year. I spoke with Mr. Blank, the harbor manager. He sent me an email with their calculations, Also, a copy of the city fee increase letter and the city resolution on duck price adjustments, which I also included in my email. I submit that it is statistically impossible for the boat slip rate to increase by 20% in 1 year if the city is doing proper survey and slip price increase calculations on an annual basis laid out in the city resolution and is proven by the last 30 years of price increases. I submit that the Balboa Yacht Basin slip price survey and calculations are not being carried out annually in a scientific manner in accordance with the resolution of the city and performed by a qualified statistician. To add insult to injury, the city and the Balboa Yacht Basin has supplied me at E12 with an extremely poorly maintained and dangerous dock full of cracks, the photographs of those which I have included in the email. For this reason, it is my opinion that these boat slip price calculations are fundamentally flawed and that this Balboa Yacht Basin price gouging increase should not be implemented until a complete and scientific analysis is done by a qualified statistician or accountant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Kathy Anderson. I'm the Commodore of the Balboa Basin Yacht Club in the Marina, and I'm here to discuss that also. I've been in the Marina myself for over 25 years, and I'm going to read one of the many letters I received from our members and Marina tenants tonight. But before I start, just to let you know, my slip myself is going up from $929 a month to the new fee that's, I guess I'm going to get it next month, $35.29 a foot for a 31-foot slip. It'll go up to $1,464.53. So, and I've been in that marina, like I said, for over 25 years. One of the letters I'm going to read, I'm just going to read one, but it says a lot. Dear members of the Newport Beach City Council and Newport Beach City Manager, in 1998, I rented a dock at the Balboa Basin, Yacht Basin. It was a lovely marina, mainly filled with small to mid-sized sailboats and power boats, not a marina for super yachts. 24 years later, many of the same boat owners, now retirees, are still Balboa Yacht Basin tenants. There have been dock rental fee increases over the years, but the one presently proposed is so unfairly high that it will be burdensome to the current tenants, all of whom are dealing with increased boating expenses already due to the current fuel prices and inflation. I fear that this large dock rental increase will force tenants, many of them Newport Beach residents, to leave this marina, if not boating itself. It is sad that Newport Beach residents cannot find reasonable priced docks in their own city. I hope that the City Council will take into account the nature of this marina and the unfairness of such a large increase, and that you decide to postpone the increase so that it can be researched and reconsidered. And I don't know if anybody's mentioned this yet, but you're using the dunes as one of the comparisons. And the dunes has a spa, they have a swimming pool, they have a kitchen, they have an area where people can go in and cook and do things for all the tenants that are there. 2 or 3 bathrooms, just a much better marina than ours. It doesn't compare to ours. So we're asking that you would take the dunes out as part of the comparison also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is John Marshall, and I'm here on behalf of Recreational Boaters of California to speak to the same issue. One of the things that we were facing up at the state level was they were proposing a 250% increase in vessel registration fees. We successfully lobbied our state assembly and senators up there to effectively have that reduced to zero. And the reason for that is that no one really could justify the amount of that increase. And we're still looking at that same thing with the slip fees in the Balboa Yacht Basin. I handed out this little handout here, couple of metrics here that I wanted just to share with you. And that is like 61% of boat owners have an annual household income of $75,000 or less. a lot of the boat owners in that basin there, in the Balboa Marina, they are on fixed incomes. And to have a significant slip fee increase, that is like the biggest expense they face on a monthly basis. And all it's going to do is make recreational boating less affordable. So people either will just sell the boat, drop out of the whole thing, or they'll move their boats up to a cheaper slip space like up in Alamitos Bay, Long Beach. So that is an alternative. So there's an elasticity of price that we're looking at here. It's just like when the price of meat becomes too expensive, people start opting in for lesser priced foods like, well, they'll go and buy some chicken perhaps or some pork instead of the expensive meat. Or they won't travel on the toll roads, they'll take the freeway. It's that elasticity of price that comes into play. And that's what we're looking at here. So the whole point here this evening was to hope that you would rescind this exorbitant fee increase for the slip owners there so that they can maintain their vessel and still have a very active boating community here in Newport Harbor. Every time I come into this town, you see the monument signs, and what do you see on those, welcome to the city of Newport Beach? You see the 3 sails on the signage there. I mean, that's what this whole place is all about, is having this jewel of a harbor here, and we just want to make it affordable, because if we keep escalating these fees, we'll get to the point where only very wealthy people can participate in recreational boating, and they'll have a big, huge boat out there and use it once a week to go to Catalina. Otherwise, it just sits there. So most of the smaller, boat owners, they're very active, and we want to maintain that community. So that's what I wanted to express here tonight, and so I hope you will rescind that 20% fee increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Don Hughes. I'm here with my wife tonight. We're both, we have our sailboat at the Balboa Yacht Basin, and we've been fortunate over the last 30 years to actually have our boat there on 2 different occasions, one nearly 25 years ago, and we experienced such a great time that when we decided 25 years later to go ahead and get another sailboat, that we wanted it in one place, and that was at the Balboa Yacht Basin. We were fortunate enough to be able to afford a boat, first of all. When I contemplated retiring 4 years ago, I had a lease with the city of Newport Beach, which said that there would be annual increases we could expect would be 3%, as a gentleman mentioned earlier tonight. As part of my planning for retirement, I went ahead and built that into my budget, anticipating that lease would stay in place, which it had during the term of my occupancy there. Earlier this year, however, I was asked to sign a new lease, which quite frankly for me was a little confusing on why I had to do that, seeing as the old lease had been in place for the term of our occupancy there up to that point. As a part of that then, soon after that, then I got an initial increase for my slip fee of, we started out, my fee on April the 1st was $1,196. I'm on a fixed income, so that's a considerable amount of money. On June 1st, it went to $1,332. On 8/1, if this continues to go forward, it'll go to $1,573. That all adds up to a monthly increase of $376 a month, or $4,500 a year. Which equals on our part is 24% increase this year. Not 3%, 24%. It seems outrageous. I haven't had the opportunity to see any of the information, the underlying information that supports this rate increase, i.e. comparable properties, but one was mentioned by a previous speaker here, Newport Dunes. My issue with Newport Dunes as a comparable is that I have a 50-foot mast. I can't even get under the bridge. I can't put my boat at that property. So how can it be a comparable property if anyone that owns a sailboat can't even use it? So I would ask the council however, whatever the process is that you're going through to determine the rate increases, to consider whether the properties are truly comparable properties. I noticed that on something that I saw that someone sent my wife this today earlier, some of the properties won't handle a 35-foot boat. My boat's a 32, but it measures 40 overall. Is that time up?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
But
thank you for your
take
time.
a couple seconds, okay. Next speaker, please come forward.
Mayor Muldoon and honorable council members. My name is Wade Womack. I'm a resident of Newport Beach. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I urge the city to hold off on the proposed significant fee increases for the boat slips at the city-owned Balboa Yacht Basin. The city has recently proposed fee increases of approximately 20% and in some cases more. Stakeholders have been asking for a review of this matter since May of this year. The only information we have received to justify this fee increase is a spreadsheet here, which was received at the 11th hour. Per the 2010 city resolution, the city is required to survey low to moderate priced marinas to determine rates at the yacht basin. The survey has gaps in information, see the red circles. It does not show how the city calculated the new rates. Also, the survey includes the dunes, which is a luxury marina compared to the bare bones yacht basin. If you look at the dunes rates between the red lines, you will see that the dune slip rates are far higher than the other marinas. If the city took a moment to extrapolate the rates for the other columns to fill in the red circles and to substitute the dunes rates with a true low-cost marina, the results would be fair, a fair survey, and better represent the intent of the 2010 resolution. Next slide, please. Here's an image from the Dunes website. You can see it's a far superior marina where tenants have pool, spa, workout room, kitchen, TV, lounge, and more. The city's yacht basin has no such amenities. Next slide, please. Here's section 3.3.2-1 of the City Local Coastal Program. Requires the city to maintain affordable boat slips in Newport Harbor. And City Policy F7E permits the city to charge less than fair market rents for recreational uses such as boat slips. Next slide, please. Here's a page from the 2010 Yacht Basin Resolution. In the area circled in blue, you will see in 2010, City Council made the effort to phase in the significant fee increase over 3 years. Was that even considered this year? Why not, given it is the fair thing to do? Towards the bottom of the underline is underlined in blue, the language encouraging the city to substitute marinas when one suggested marina is out of whack. Did the city consider substituting the high-cost Dunes Marina? Why not, given it is the fair thing to do? I respectfully request the city to hold off on the fee increase and work collaboratively with stakeholders on a better survey and to phase in any significant fee increase because it is the fair thing to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, see no, oh yes, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I received this flyer, and when you did your first meeting a year ago, I never got a flyer, so I never showed up to protest the fees for recycling in Newport Coast. Since then, I've lived there since 2002. We have been recycling all those years. We have multiple trash cans.
So I'm sorry, that's actually the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you can speak now, if you like, we did this to you earlier. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But, okay.
I didn't know what the order was. I haven't been to one of your meetings
I heard
before.
fee and I thought it was another slip issue.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Next speaker, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Nolan Cannon. Until about 6 months ago, I was a resident of Newport Beach for about 3 years. Previous to that, lived in Costa Mesa for several years. Been a long-time boater in Newport Harbor. Grew up sailing here since I was about that tall. My grandparents have lived here for many years in Coronado Del Mar. I think most of you probably received my letters over the past week, so I won't bore you going through all the details. But similarly to some of the other folks here, been a renter at Balboa Yacht Basin for about 6 years, and am here obviously about the slip increases. The one, I won't go through every detail of my letters. I think most of you hopefully have read them by this point. But the one suggestion that I would have is if there is a increase coming, which honestly there probably should be based on the recent inflation we've experienced, possibly not quite as high as we're seeing, but I think considering phasing it in over a period of time would be very beneficial to many of the slip holders, because it's not quite as easy as just moving your car off the street, moving your boat, if that's what you are going to do. Many marinas up and down the coast have long waiting lists, and having to come up with a new spot to store your boat in 60 days really is not a feasible thing in many cases. So I hope you read the letters and take this into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Next speaker. Okay, seeing none, we'll now close that item and move on to public hearing. Item number 13. Staff?
Yep.
Do we have recusal on this item?
Yeah, recusal due to real property interest.
Thank you.
Finance Director Scott Catlett is here to answer questions this evening, Mayor and Council, and he also has a brief presentation should the Council desire.
I think a short presentation is in order.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of Council. Good evening. I'm Scott Catlett, your Finance Director. The item before you this evening has to do with a subset of our utility bills where we are only billing a customer for either sewer service or recycling service. Most of our customers also get water service from the city. And so you'll see here on the slide a listing of the number of accounts that we're talking about here. So it's about 5,000, well under 5,000 on the recycling side and about 600 on the sewer side. One of the challenges with these bills is that unlike with water customers where we can shut off the water service to those homes if they don't pay the bill, in this case, we have limited options to collect. We have to go through a collections agency process, which can be lengthy. We've also have some issues with these bills in terms of establishing where they should be going. Should it be the property owner? Should it be the tenant? And oftentimes these are second homes for folks, and maybe they're getting the bill at an address other than the one where they're actually getting the rest of their mail. So it is proved to have a higher delinquency level than some of our other utility accounts. So the proposal here is to move these charges to the property tax roll, which is a common practice for these kind of charges in other cities in California. And there's no change proposed to the fees. There's no change proposed to the frequency, just the method of collection. This would flow through the county through the normal property tax process, and then the funds would come back to the city. They handle the collections just as they do with delinquent property taxes with the foreclosure process. Finance Committee looked at this on April 14th at their meeting, and we received a unanimous endorsement from the Finance Committee to move forward. We have the bills on hold for July, pending the Council's approval of this item, and we would then suspend the former billing process effective July 1st and move to the property tax roll. And with that, our recommendations are on the screen. Happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais? Councilwoman Dixon.
So if the sewer connection fee is tied into the property tax, so presumably they will pay it twice a year? Or they can pay it more frequently if they set up a different kind of installment plan, I guess?
They would just pay it through the normal property tax process, which typically is the April and December payments. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any public comments on this item? Please come forward. Yes. You've been so patient. Thank you. I would love to skip you just for fun, and I'm going to come back later.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Shirley Cameron. I live in Newport Coast. I bought my home there in 2002, and we have been recycling there since I moved in. We have all these trash bins that are put out every Thursday or Friday, and I don't understand why we are being charged a recycling fee. I want to know.
I will ask staff to answer that question when you're complete. Normally, it's for comments, and then we can direct staff to answer the
Okay.
questions after.
Okay.
If you have any other comments you'd like to give, you have 2 minutes still.
Oh, okay. So I'd like to know how they came up with this recycling fee. I missed the first meeting that they had. I didn't get a flyer like I did this time. So last year I didn't come to the meeting, but I would have if I had gotten the flyer. I didn't find out about it till much, much later. But I want to know, what the legal right is, how they came up with a fee. And I just don't think it's right. We've been recycling all along. Why do we have a fee? So I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Any other comments on this item, please come forward.
Mayor Muldoon, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. As you may remember, when you approved the recycling fee, I also have a number of questions. Number one, whether the city should be charging at all for most of the city because of the voter enacted ordinance that we have that should provide free trash service for most curbside residential. And secondly, even if you had the authority to charge for recycling, whether there was any logic to the way that this particular fee was calculated. I realize that the city attorney disagrees with my interpretation of those things, but that still is my position. As to the substance of what you're asked tonight, that charge, whether correct or incorrect, this seems to be a reasonable and commonly used method of billing. I don't see anything wrong with that. One thing that puzzled me, I don't think we saw the slide here, but in the handout of slides that was in the lobby, it mentions that the Finance Committee reviewed the issue and recommends transitioning to the property tax billing at their meeting on April 14th. My memory is not as good as some people imagine it is. I don't remember that discussion at the Finance Committee. I looked at the agenda for April 14th. I could not see anything about that on it. I looked at some other agendas, could not see anything about that. The Finance Committee has met since then on May 12th and May 26th. There's no minutes currently for any of those meetings, which is a little bit of a problem because when the related but partially unrelated to what you're talking about tonight, our city has a practice of only posting minutes for our draft minutes of meetings until the next meeting. And the Finance Committee is currently on hiatus, so people who want to know what happened at those meetings cannot see any record of what happened there. It's a problem common to all of our boards, commissions, and committees. The minutes are not immediately available. But anyway, I could not verify that any such recommendation had ever been made. It certainly doesn't seem to have been made on April 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, would you mind addressing the ladies' concerns?
Well, if I could first about the agenda question, because I can answer that one. I'll defer to Public Works on the ladies' questions. This item was in the work plan for the May Finance Committee meeting, and the members of the council who are on the Finance Committee may recall that in discussing the work plan at the April meeting, I think it was Committee Member Colopy who raised the question of does this item need to come forward with a full presentation. I gave a brief oral update at the end of the April meeting, and then the committee endorsed the item at that meeting. So that's the reason it wasn't on the agenda, because it was going to be happening in May. And if Public Works could answer the other question.
Yes, thank you. If you recall the discussions when we were working on a residential refuge program, we have a recycling fee, and there's a recycling fee is calculated on the differential in costs for normal trash collection and the enhanced amount of money that's cost due to the state mandates to recycle versus taking all the landfill and just dumping. It's one cost. When the state mandated recycling, it added a cost, the MRFs, all the sorting. So we have a fee for all our residents to be charged recovery of that. Now, the Newport Coast fee just went in effect last year. Recall, they didn't have a fee to begin with. When they were annexed, they were getting free trash. When we updated our recycling fees, we also added that fee into place, which was just a little differential lower than the rest of the city at this point.
Great, thank you. Okay. Any comments on the dais on this item? Okay, entertain a motion if there is one. Okay, moved by Councilman Duffield. Seconded by Councilwoman Dixon. Seeing no request to speak, let's vote.
With Councilmember O'Neill recusing himself and Mayor Muldoon voting no, the motion carries 5-1.
Thank you, and that required a supermajority, and it passed. Okay, item number 14.
Mayor and Council, this item pertains to amending Council Policy A2, which prescribes the rules and governance of the city's boards, committees, and commissions. It was brought forward by Councilmember Dixon as an A1 item, your Council Policy A1. And tonight, the proposal is to amend Council Policy A2 to discourage the appointment of persons to a board, committee, or commission that, A, in their professional capacity, supervise or are supervised by another member of that board, committee, or commission, or B, are related to another member of that board, committee, or commission.
Thank you. I believe that summarizes. Do we have a request to speak? Yes, Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, let me add on to that from my intent. I propose this for the following reasons. A few comments to make here. Our city and city council work to uphold the highest standards of conduct at all times, and it's important to avoid any appearance of improper influence on our boards and commissions. An appearance of impropriety can occur when two members of a council-appointed board or commission are employed by the same company in supervisor and subordinate roles. Such a situation may create a potential issue where the subject individuals may not be exercising independent judgment. This type of situation on a 5 or 7 member commission could constitute a potential voting bias on matters of proposed council policy. Project applicants, whether before the planning or other commissions, should have the confidence that their project or matter under consideration will be considered free of bias and free of pressure that could be exerted between commission members who are employed in supervisor subordinate roles. We should strive to avoid any appearance of impropriety that could exist and expose potential risks to the city. Why not prohibit? I know we say discourage in the staff report. I'd like to go further. Why not prohibit our boards and commissions in the exercise of the highest standards of governance from having any members employed by the same firm and serving in a supervisorial subordinate role? It is apparent that our council majority ignored this apparent impropriety and has recently made such an appointment to our planning commission. I believe this to be unwise, and we should strive for the best for our city, and any potential integrity matters should be addressed. In no way am I suggesting that the particular planning commissioner who was appointed is less than stellar quality. This has nothing to do with the individual. This is simply a process question and issue. Newport Beach, well, it's apparent that our council currently ignores this concept. I believe this sends a message to the community that appearances of impropriety are of no concern. Newport Beach residents deserve a higher standard. And I urge my council colleagues to join me in support of a common sense policy change that would send a positive message to our community that we are cognizant of this. So I move that the council prohibit the appointment of commission and board members employed by the same firm and serving in a supervisorial and subordinate roles, and to be added to the additional language existing about members of the same household. No change to that. Thank you.
Thank you. So there was a motion, and you amended the item?
Correct.
To state?
To prohibit.
Okay, so currently it says discourage, and you made a motion to put prohibit, and did you change any other language on it?
No, I'll defer to the city attorney, but the key substance is to prohibit the appointment of a commission and board members employed by the same firm and serving in supervisorial subordinate roles.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Councilman Brenner. Mayor Pro Tem Blum.
So when I was reading through this, I was stricken by the beginning paragraph of that same red line that says, the city council shall make every effort to appoint the best qualified person to serve in the interests of Newport Beach. I sat on that committee, and I actually have no idea. I'm garnering an idea right now of who you might be talking about, but I actually knew most of the people that were applying for that role, and I had sat down with all of them, kind of discussed their views, what they were looking for, and no idea what their work history or who might work in the same firm or whether that had any bearing on us up here appointing somebody to a committee. And then I'm also confused. We've added a family member, and I think it's extremely interesting because this is a city of a lot of legacy. And sometimes, I think of Walt Howell and kind of the people that have gone through that have cared so much about the city, and that we're now going to start asking them questions about, who do you have family members that have ever done this? What's your work history? Who are your supervisors? Who do you report to? And we get into like a gray area of regulation. And I think that we voted up here. We came to a vote amongst the people up here. There wasn't other interest. This is just, we're going to keep adding more and more regulation because somebody didn't like who was chosen by a majority of the council. And I find that just really strange because the first sentence still speaks to me. We should make every effort to appoint the best qualified person. And we're not always going to agree on that. And that's okay. That's part of the purpose. We like each other. We're friends with each other, but that doesn't mean we always agree. And sometimes to add to the bureaucracy by adding more language that even seems excessively vague to me now, and I have no idea then how we're going to start going through this application process at that point that, who owns your firm? Are you with a multinational? Is your supervisor a president? Is it your direct supervisor? Is this a small little enterprise? Is it one of my servers that couldn't be a Parks, Beach, and Rec person because they're managed somehow by me? And we all of a sudden start getting into this thing that, why are we trying to limit the people that are applying to boards? Because as we sat in that ad hoc committee, I think actually one of the largest problems, there were not enough people applying for many of the boards. There were some where we had one or two and we interviewed all of them. We sat there as a group and had friendly chats, and a lot of them, as they sat and met us at another time, we got to dig into their history, what they want here, what they're looking for. Is this something because they've been involved in every committee, or do they have a difference of opinion maybe than the rest of that board? And for my part, my nomination, the person that I ended up voting for, was because of that. He has a young family, he lives around here, and maybe his view was just different of what the other planning commission members might be. And so the more steps we keep adding, at one point we're trying to reduce the language so that more people understand it. And now I'm looking at more language that just makes this more opaque so that we can pick and choose who gets to be on boards by limiting the ability of who applies. And I'm just not a fan of that in representative government. I don't think we have a conflict right now. I don't think anybody has brought that up other than people that didn't vote for the person that was elected to that board. And to me, this feels like we're trying to change the rules so that we can get what we want. And that's not, I think, why we're up here. I like the diversity in our groups. I like that there's varying types of people. I don't want to just see people that have been on every committee make it up into these boards and commissions. I want to see people that maybe are doing this for another reason, and that it's a more open interviewing process rather than a more limited one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill.
Yeah. So my original objection to this policy is that it does nothing, but it's actually worse than doing nothing because it inartfully is trying to solve problems that don't actually exist and adds language that actually creates confusion. I assumed, frankly, that this was brought up because of the Planning Commission vote that we made. I remember after the vote was made, one of the council members on the minority side on that leaned in and rather loudly said, "Who is that?" I am aware that that person had reached out to that particular council member to sit down for coffee, so that the answer to that could have been obvious. I'm also a little surprised that an accusation would be made that this would even apply to that particular council member or that particular commission member. So I actually reached out and asked the two commissioners, would this proposed council policy even apply to either of you? Are either of you a supervisor or a supervisoree of the other? The answer is nope. So apparently this right now, this proposal is based on a false premise that is creating a bad policy. And it's just bizarre because in 8 years of 3 council members serving and then 6 years for Brad and me serving, these two issues have never once come up. But in the last year of serving, for 3 of our colleagues, a new council policy is being offered that's designed to affect a process that they will not even be on council to actually oversee. Of course, we shouldn't be putting spouses on a committee together, but do we really need a policy to say that? I mean, it's trying to reach beyond their own terms at this moment to try to kind of put this forward. And it's odd. We can and we should be trusting future council members to be smart enough to decide these issues for themselves. And quite frankly, this kind of approach, it violates the last 6 years of trying to reduce council policies instead of adding to them. 6 years ago, we initiated a process where we actually were able to reduce council policies by 30,000 words. And we're actually a better, more streamlined city because of it. And I don't know if anyone actually read Jim Mosier's comments. I did, and he's right. The language is vague. It's discouraging, which is ambiguous. At least we've now got it in a point where it's prohibiting, although we could waive that just like we waived it for someone on the Arts Commission, I suppose. And it's at best at this point just a feel-good process. Honestly, if we really wanted a policy that addresses real problems, it should be focused in on council members trying to interfere in leadership elections for boards, commissions, and committees that just happened 2 weeks ago. And so, this really is the point where we're trying to go after something that does not exist. And I think that there should have been a lot more diligence done before trying to introduce this based on a false premise. So ratifying this today would be a ratification of a false premise. And it's beyond me that this is coming forward as a way to try to, make hay on a disagreement on who should be on the Planning Commission right now.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dixon.
Sure, thank you. First of all, as I said in my comments, this doesn't apply in any way to current appointees. This is for future appointment process. And we have a city of 85,000 people, and it seems to me that we should have, for those who apply to our boards and commissions, should have, and those who apply many times should have an opportunity. But why is it that one firm, in this case, I'm not suggesting anything happened. Nowhere did I say that appointment should be rescinded or changed anyway to continue to move forward as it is. I'm saying going forward because there is an appearance. You could ask the people, but it's clear on looking on a company's website who is a senior officer, who is a partner, who is not a partner in small or large firms. This does not address anything in a multinational corporation. It's simply, does someone have a close working relationship? It doesn't require any more further than that. In fact, when I went back and reread the applications, it was clearly stated nobody was trying, I'm not suggesting anyone was trying to hide anything. It just brought to mind that there is a potential for, as I said in my earlier remarks, for impropriety that two people who work in the same office in the future, I'm not addressing this particular situation, there is an appearance of impropriety. That's as far as it is. And it doesn't add any more words to our policies than we have normally added. And in fact, we have to be very careful about our policies and changing the substance. So this is simply about optics and appearances for people who serve on our boards and commissions. And it seems in a city our size that to have two people from the same company in a small office serving on our planning commission, it creates an appearance problem. And it's not nonsensical. It is smart management, governance of the highest levels of integrity just to protect our city and the people who serve. So there's nothing more in it than that. The current appointments stand. There's no proposal to change that. You didn't hear me say a word about that. So all of that is kind of speculative, which is not relevant. So I think it is helpful for good governance, and it should cause no problems to anyone in the future, current, in the past or future. My term on the 8 years on the city council, I did not know that in your final year, you're not allowed to introduce any new policies. I had not read that in any of our current policies. But in any event, I've never had this circumstance. I've never observed this circumstance in my years on the council. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill.
So in your opening remarks, what you actually said, and I wrote it down because I was surprised you would go this far, is that the current council ignores the policies in this. The current council majority ignored the principles in this, and that's why you needed this. That's what you said.
Please address the chair, Councilman O'Neill.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Dixon, in her original remarks, said that the current council majority ignores the principles of this policy in its appointment on the Planning Commission, and that's why this is necessary. That was what she said. And so my remarks in response were that no, we didn't. And the secondary remarks that were just made don't apply to the policy that has been proposed. Ms. Dixon was referencing specifically in her second set of remarks the idea that there should not be people in the same office serving together on a board or commission or committee because of the appearance of impropriety. That is not what this policy says. What this policy actually says is that someone should not be on the same board with someone they either supervise or are supervised by. That is not what occurred on the Planning Commission appointments. But the Planning Commission appointment, based on the first statements that Ms. Dixon made, is the reason that this was proposed. She said specifically that the current council majority ignored the principles that underlie this. And I dispute that, and I believe very strongly that if what she's actually trying to get to is to try to avoid appearances of impropriety, this policy does not do that to the point of what she's trying to get to, and therefore a ratification of the policy proposed is to ratify a misunderstanding and frankly a misstatement of what the current council actually did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill. Councilwoman Brenner.
I'd like to speak to not what anybody said or anybody didn't say or anything like that. I'm just looking at this policy and thinking that we really like diversity on our commissions, and that if we were a little tiny town that had maybe one big business, that it would make sense that we would have people on our commissions that serve in different capacities, maybe at that one company. But we're a big city, and we have a lot of variety in the people that live here and that work here. And it just seems like a good policy to think about that we'd like more diversity than that, than having two people on one commission from one company.
Hey, Councilwoman Brenner, any other requests to speak before we go out to the public? Okay, this time we'll take public comments on this item. Public comments on this item, please come forward. Even Jim's not touching this. Okay, we're coming back to the dais. Before I speak, Councilman Avery has a request to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't really privy on the relationships as they are now in the Planning Commission with two people working in the same firm. But I'm supportive. I think it does make sense with a 7-member board or commission to not have people, particularly in the ones that have a little more weight on them, that work in the same firm, because I think it's probable that they would be compelled to vote very similarly along the way. So it's as simple as that, and I think a normal person looking at that would assume that or just think that that could occur, and so we should avoid that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Blum.
Thank you. There was some language in here that already exists, and I thought it would be important to just read it out. Because we do form an ad hoc committee, and people that did not vote together when we did our final vote did sit on that ad hoc committee. And there's a line here that says, the ad hoc committee shall attempt to determine if there exists a potential conflict of interest which might interfere with the performance of the applicant's duty in an impartial manner free from bias. We already have this language in this document. We are looking to make sure that that's the role. That's why we interview these people. That's why we sit and talk. That's why they fill out the application. And by some members of this dais, they've even said it was clearly spelled out on the application. We're not talking about what was on the application. We're not talking about what was in the ad hoc committee. We're not talking about even the people. We're talking about the decision wasn't what someone wanted, so now we're changing the language to make it more confusing. And I agree, the most diversity we can bring. So the least language, the least prohibitions for letting people apply are better. We have ad hoc committees that recommend to council. Our ad hoc committee did recommend these people to council, and then we voted. This is the beauty of the process. The problem is that the vote didn't go a certain way, and so now we want to add more language that mucks up and confuses this entire document, which, from my personal opinion, is the problem with bureaucracy. We keep adding things because we don't like an outcome. I want to take away more so that more people get out there, so that they find this process less daunting. We are here to make sure there's not a conflict of interest. We had the ability to discuss that, to ask those questions from sides of both voting for and against that person. And so it is already in the document. Why are we restating it in a confusing way when it's already written in a much clearer way? We, as the ad hoc, determined there was no conflict of interest, that they were going to execute their duty in the best way and impartial way they could. Why are we mucking things up? We're supposed to be cleaning it up so that more people can understand what these things are. It takes a long time to read through these items. And so every time someone reads through and says, okay, I can apply for this board in this city, I'm excited about this position, oh, here's this, I can't be this, okay, this person, I don't know, is that confusing? What's the point of that? We actually sit, we interview, they fill out a questionnaire, we get to choose, and then we bring it up to a democratic vote. The democratic vote happened. I think we're good. I don't think we need more. I don't think we need to keep making more rules and laws. I don't think we need to keep adding things to stuff we have. I think we all like each other. We might not always agree and vote the same way, but it's okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Blum. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you. Just to be clear, it's just to add more clarity to the existing policy with a couple more words. And it has nothing to do with who was appointed. I'll say that multiple times. Nothing to unwind. It's just to add further clarity. And technically, it's not a conflict of interest. It's the appearance of impropriety that two people would be in the same firm, one's a higher level official and two over the other one. That it creates a sense, an appearance of impropriety, not necessarily even a conflict, to clarify the word conflict even further so that those appointments take that into consideration. So that's what the purpose is. And I think a lot of this is making it more dramatic than it needs to be. It's just to clarify the appointment process.
Thank you. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this. Really quick, Mr. Harp, when someone is appointed to a committee or a commission, are they viewed as public officials or public office holders the way that police, prosecutors, and elected officials are?
I think in a lot of ways they are. They, are required. A lot of them are required to report, file Form 700s, avoid conflict of interest. So, in a lot of contexts, they are treated as public officials.
But certainly, a citizen appointed to a committee would be a lesser public official than an elected official.
That's absolutely correct.
So I deeply respect the lens in which my colleagues view bureaucracy and additional rules, in this case, council policies that really apply to us, the city council. I'm going to cite my personal favorite founding father, a lesser-known one who few know, but I'm partial to, by the name of Abraham Clark. Ironically, given the topic of this item, I am partial to him because he is my second cousin 8 times removed, meaning his great-grandparents are my direct ancestors many generations back, and he has influenced my view on these topics. As a founding father and the signer of Declaration of Independence, he was an advocate for individual liberties and a restrained government. But at the same time, it was said of Clark by historian Ruth Bogan, one difference between Clark and many other Whigs, that was his political affiliation, was that he understood tyranny might arise from the new American centers of power as well as from the British. Clark, quote, did not believe men in public office should use their positions to confer favors on members of their personal families. So in that respect, I am very much in agreement on nepotism, which is part of this motion. In addition to being an advocate for and visionary for limited government, Clark was a leader in government abuse of power and nepotism. And this was another revolutionary concept to American government, as the system from England was built entirely upon relationships with the crown and fealty. When his revolutionary patriot sons were captured by the British, he even refused his position to negotiate the release or give them any special treatment. So he really was a pioneer. This council policy is not only a policy that ties the hand of public office holders, that's us, it's also one that safeguards against nepotism, which does not always include means of offering favors to other family members, but can be involve familial dynamics and governing together. It also can involve superior and subordinate positions. So I support the original language, which went to supervisor and family members for those reasons. And although I understand my colleague's point on extra regulation, I think we have a rich tradition of avoiding nepotism and abuse of power over colleagues. Now, with that being said, I don't believe 2 individuals in the same firm would have a conflict if there's no overriding power over the other. And quite frankly, if one had a conflict, the other would have a conflict as well. So I would support the original language for those reasons that kept me up late at night and I wrote up, but I would not support the amended.
Go with discourage.
The supervisor to me matters most because that's a position of power over a subordinate. And that, I feel, also goes to nepotism, and that a family member is being biased inherently because they're related to someone. So when it was brought to me originally, I thought it was common sense. Now, with amendments you made, I feel it no longer goes towards the heart of nepotism, which is an inherent bias.
Just for purposes of moving forward with some resolution, I'll go with with the language that's in the staff report or the amended language.
Yes.
I'll make my motion to support the language that's currently written in the staff report, in the proposed ordinance.
Right. And for the record, I do not believe this applies to anyone, and I would not be voting for something that punitively applied to anyone.
I totally support that statement.
Okay, so there's a amended motion and a second, and it was amended by the original motion maker, Councilwoman Dixon, and the amendment was accepted as a second. Are there any comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, let's vote.
With council members Duffield, O'Neill, and Blom voting no, the motion carries 4-3.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the announcement for motions for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the city council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Thank you. Are there any motions to reconsider? Seeing none from the dais, we are adjourned.